Hello everyone, I'm Nathan. Thank you for inviting me to speak here at the CEPA Forum. I'm an activist from Hong Kong and now flat and based in London. Life has been very turbulent for me. I was a student leader in the 2014 Umbrella Movement and then elected in 2016 as the youngest lawmaker in Hong Kong's history and being expelled from the council by the Chinese Communist Party and jailed in 2017. Last September felt like a lifetime away. Back then, I started graduate school at Yale in the US, but I was also constantly worried about my hometown. Hong Kong was not in a good shape. Ever since the anti-extradition protest started last June, we witnessed many episodes of unchecked police brutality. We got tear gassed every week. We saw how the police walk away as thugs beat up passers-by, journalists, and practically anyone in a subway station. We watched in horror as the police shot tear gas and rubber bullets at head level with no regard to irreplaceable injuries they inflicted. But even with all the frustration, anger, and disappointment at the government, Hong Kongers keep trying. We marched on the streets in millions. When mass protests became illegal, we moved to shopping malls and even the airport to chant slogans and sing the protest anthem. As restrictions upon us grew stricter, Hong Kongers came up with new ways to protest. But Beijing kept quashing our civic society and our basic rights. As the world fought the coronavirus, Beijing pushed another draconian law to silence the hold of Hong Kong. The CCP bypassed Hong Kong's legislators to impose the so-called national security law. It completely destroys the freedom of expression of Hong Kong people. Anything, like chanting slogans or posting social media posts that is considered triggering hatred towards the government, could be illegal. The law allows Beijing to prosecute Hong Kong dissidents at their will and morph the whole legal system of Hong Kong into what China has right now, one that lacks judicial independence and fairness. It became clear that many of my actions, like testifying in a US Congress hearing and calling for sanctions for Hong Kong's officials who are responsible for human rights violations, would be illegal. In fact, the state media claimed that I am in a wanted list under the national security law now. If I were staying in Hong Kong under the law, I would face up to life imprisonment or even extradition to mainland China. It became clear to me that if I wanted to continue speaking out for Hong Kong and continue the international advocacy work that I'd been doing, I had to leave my hometown. For the time being, I have no way back. My example vividly demonstrates the dangers of authoritarianism, depriving people's rights, putting them in jail, tossing their mandate to their political representations into the rubbish bin. When individuals' freedom and rights are not protected, our society and our way of living could change very rapidly. Hong Kong is a salient example of how fast things could be deteriorated. Reporters are worried when they cover sensitive information, sensitive news. Professors are amending their research topics in order to escape from the red lines of the law. Self-censorship emerged after the implementation of the national security law. For those who are far away from Hong Kong and China, like Europe, Beijing uses its soft and sharp power, and often its capacity to invest or allow entry to its vast market to lure government to take its side. The 17+1 initiative China set up with Central and Eastern European countries is an obvious example. In return of such collaboration, we've seen governments toning down or even blocking statements condemning China's human rights violation. But Beijing's tactics is not limited to carrots. In its most recent trip, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi wanted that Czech Senate President would pay a heavy price for visiting Taiwan and trigger an outcry from the European countries' leaders. In the very same trip, He effectively cautioned the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs that the two countries' ties would be strained again if China's core interests are not accommodated, just like what happened last time in 2010 when the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Liu Xiaobo, a Chinese democratic activist who was jailed at the time. Beijing does not shy away from making threats. If you want to exercise your freedom to speak up your mind or do what you think is right. This is why anyone, any country that cares about freedom and democracy cannot look the other way when an authoritarian regime keeps threatening the democracies. Every time the free world let Beijing continue to its old ways, after some verbal condemnation is showing them that nothing will stop this expanding authoritarianism. Countries in the free world must act. It is now more important than ever to stand for our shared values of freedom and democracy. As you discuss how the new transatlantic decade should look like, I urge you to consider what policies can be put in place to signal our determination to protect these shared values. We need to build up a united front and coalition that holds China accountable. We do it assertively and multilaterally, with every democracy working together. Human rights clauses in trade deals, high scrutiny to Chinese international enterprises, sanctions on its corrupted officials, boycotting major events like 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics if they don't fix their gross human rights violation. These are the actions that we need to take. If we are unable to act, the situation of Hong Kong, the burden of our time, would be an example of how the world would end up and influenced by the authoritarian Chinese Communist Party. I hope you, whenever you are watching, can stand with us too, can walk with us and support our movement until the dawn arrives and the sunlight penetrates the heavy dark cloud above all of us. Thank you so much.